So I will introduce Amy to introduce our guest today.
Thank you so much, Bryce. Let me pull up the information. Okay, today we have with us Mariana Valenzuela Figueroa. Mariana, can you say the last part?
Absolutely. Figueroa.
Figueroa?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. She was born in La Serena, Chile, and has lived in the state of Oregon since 2001. She received her MBA from Pacific University, Go Boxers, as well as a BA in Latin American Studies, a Master's of Art in Literature from New Mexico State University. Her professional career includes 27 years of teaching experience at institutions of higher ed, including Idaho State University, Portland Community College, and Pacific University. Currently, she holds a position of Director of Community Partnerships and Advocacy at Centro Cultural, where she has worked on civic engagement projects and community outreach since August 2018. Ms. Valenzuela is a member of the Latino Policy Council and City Councilor for the City of Forest Grove. Welcome, Mariana.
Thank you so much, Amy, for that lovely introduction. And thank you for inviting me to be here with you today to share my story, my perspective, my experience. And I have to tell you, I'm very humbled by this invitation. And I hope I can make a positive contribution to your day today. And I also want to thank you for your service. I know you have done great service to the community and vulnerable members of the community. And I want to thank you for that, for all the work that you have done. You have changed many lives. So I will go ahead and share my screen now. Do I have the ability to do now that, Bryce? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so if I could just move this out of my way, I can probably go to the slideshow from the beginning. All right, can you all hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. So yes, I am here today to talk to you about my experience as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Cannot move to the, oh, there it is. All right, so the content of my presentation includes a story of me, a very brief story, a terminology of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI in society, watching the game, time for questions and answers, and closing remarks. So let me begin with my story. I put this map here to show you my journey, where I come from and where I am, although that kind of puts me at Coos Bay, somewhere there, not really in Forest Grove. However, let me go ahead and tell you about my story. I came to the US as a child, 11 years old, and my experience or my expectations of the United States were shaped by Hollywood movies, okay, where they always had LA, New York, places like that. So imagine my shock when I arrived to El Paso, Texas. I am a native of Chile. I could walk and be in the ocean, or look east and see the Andean Mountains. So this was a very, very different place for me. However, I lived many years of my life in El Paso, Las Cruces, mainly Las Cruces. That's where I went to college. I met my best friend, Leticia, there. And that's where I built very important parts of my life. I built a family. I have a daughter and a son, Christina and Pablo. And eventually life took me to Idaho. So Idaho, where I spent 5 years of my life, was the last place I expected to go after graduating from college. But there was a position at Idaho State University for my ex-husband, and that's where we went. very cold place, very different. And if you will indulge me for a moment, think about the word different, because after living in the Southwest, where 60% of the population looked like me, spoke Spanish at all times, you could see it everywhere, you could hear it everywhere, at the bank, at the hospital, in schools, everywhere you went, the language was spoken. Idaho was different. But I did not realize how different it was until I took my daughter on her first day to kindergarten. And I was there like many other parents with their child. And a little boy came up to me and he said, "Excuse me, are you Mexican?" He asked me. And I explained to him, no, I said, I am from Chile. I told him where it was. It was a long, skinny country with a very long coast. And then he walked away. But at that moment, I realized the difference between me and those around me, between my daughter and those around me. And lately, I have thought a lot about that encounter with the child. I never really thought about it much until these last few months, that we are working so hard to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplace, in our lives, everywhere. It has become essential. It has become essential. So, and I mean different in the sense of color, skin color, just that, a skin color, not character, not intellect, nor capacity to feel sympathy or compassion for others, just skin color, which to me is the second layer of a person. To me, the first layer is that energy that surrounds us, like an invisible light or an invisible dark cloud, which is what people first perceive when they see others. So thinking about, let us keep that word different in mind as I go to the next slide and I begin to talk about terminology. Now, I did not go to a dictionary to get a definition for these words. Diversity. And I chose these pictures. You have here all these different pieces. But at the end of the day, they're all part of a whole, right? They're all part of one entity. And they're all necessary to make this picture complete. Otherwise, something would be missing. And this world would be a very boring place. Let me go back to diversity. This is, I don't want to forget anything. In the last few years, organizations, companies have tried to bring diversity to their workforce. But diversity and inclusion should not be confused with one another. So I want to use a quote by one of the DEI experts that says, diversity is inviting people to the dance. Inclusion is asking them to dance. That explains the difference between these words very, very clearly. And why are these organizations or corporations bringing diversity? Because they're more productive that way. When you have different voices, different perspectives participating in the decision-making process. And that's where inclusion comes in. You can have different cultures, different backgrounds, physical capacities as part of your workforce. But it's meaningless if they are not present in a meaningful way, if they're not present during the decision-making process. It becomes meaningless. That's when we feel tokenized. I am here because of my color. I am here because of my background. I am here because of my disability. Being tokenized when we are not part of the process and our voices are not heard. So equity, see, we have some pieces, right, that fit together into the system without any trouble at all. And they can become very easily part of the whole. But other pieces are more complex and they require more thought and special traits to put it together. So what does the system do? What can the system do with all these different pieces? How do we put it together? How do we make this work for everyone? Well, we have strategies and people are developing new ways of doing this, of bringing DEI into the organizations, into the workplace, into their families. How do we raise our children? What do we teach them? So some of these strategies we can put in a toolbox, okay? But it doesn't say tools required for DEI. It says tool requires for a better world. Empathy, right? Determination, perseverance, and wise understanding, a clear understanding of justice. And always faithful to the phrase, si se puede. Yes, it is possible to make it happen. Inclusion. All the pieces are essential and necessary to get from here, this mess we have here, to a full, beautiful picture. You cannot do without any of the pieces. So DEI in society, watching the game. I love this picture because it illustrates very clearly what equity means, justice, diversity, and how do we make it good for everyone to watch the game. We have to provide, as a society, those who can provide, so we can all watch the game. So let's think about the game this way. This is the game: work and job opportunities, education, housing, healthcare, basic things. That is the game. And we need to do this so we can all see the field. This illustration, I wanted to include it. I could not leave it out. Because now we have 4 different concepts. Reality. Equality doesn't work. Equity works, but we're still behind the fence. No fence. We can be here and we can cheer and be part of it. How do we get from this to that? We have a toolbox. We have a toolbox. And we can talk about DEI and we can attend trainings about DEI, and you might have to listen to presentations of a 5-foot Latino woman from time to time that will tell you her story in DEI. But how about if we just go back to basics to make this happen? So many trainings, so many hours. But how about going back to basics, about the golden rule that sometime in our lives we heard, either from our grandparents, our parents, teachers, friends. How about going back to basics, to the golden rule? The golden rule. Expressed by every religion that we use to guide us. The one I heard, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. No one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother what he desires for himself. What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man. That is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. Hurt not others with that which pains yourself. Everywhere we see this. So how about going back to the golden rule? And now I want to thank you. Here is my journey again. I guess this puts me a little bit closer to Forest Grove, this arrow.
Okay, so
And I will be happy to hear your comments and your questions.
well, I don't know, I have any questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Counselor. I'm sure we have some questions. I think the definitions that you arrived at for diversity and inclusion, I really like to hear, people's own take on what that looks like for them. Can you talk a little bit about what the city is working on as far as DEI?
Absolutely. So DEI is a very important component of our goals that we have set out. And we have also embarked into DEI training, to explain what it means, what it is. But my personal thought has always been, what about the golden rule? So in our practices through the city council, what we do is provide our services to everyone in a way that they have access to it. For example, we forget a lot sometimes about our senior citizens. Sometimes they don't have access to technology. It's not easy for them to log in, to go to the city's webpage, to register for something. So the efforts are there to make it happen. But it's, in all of our goals, the city has DEI in mind, whether it's housing, opportunities for work, city jobs. It is present. And also in our boards and commissions. We have a diverse representation within these boards and commissions as well. We made a particular effort with the CPAC, our new commission for the police advisory committee. Amy.
Yes, just a quick follow-up. Do you have a sense of timing on when the report from the consultant will be available to the public?
I do not, Amy.
How do we
But I
find
will
out
certainly I will certainly get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yes, MIG has been doing the work for us, conducting community outreach. And that's how we found out things that need to be fixed. However, the full study has not been completed yet. But I will certainly get back to you so you can share that information with the members of this club. Yes, absolutely.
And please, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and put them out there. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you, Counselor, again.
You're very welcome.
It
My
was great to
pleasure
hear from you.
to be here today.
And hopefully we can continue to stay in touch and apprised of the city's efforts in this area.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. So Amy, wait to hear from me. Oh, but I'm sorry. I don't mean to, I would like to have some comments about your thoughts about DEI, about your ideas.
Yeah.
What do you think it should look like?
That's a great question. I know we had a visioning session with our club leadership back in June. Since, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, we've had a working DEI committee as part of the club for, it's been well over a year now, to have a survey to kind of take the temperature of our club and how our members feel about where we are in our DEI efforts. And I think there's been efforts over time, but I was the program chair last calendar year, and I worked to bring more programs talking about cultural history outside of what we typically learn about. About Oregon's history. So we had an author who came and gave us a presentation about the history of African Americans in Oregon, which was very interesting. And so it's something that we on a board level have identified as needing to work to make our club better representative of our community, and examining the structure of our club and how we operate and how we can make it a more welcoming and inclusive place for all of our community members. So other people might have other thoughts as well.
Yeah, Janine, I believe Janine has a comment or a question.
I don't know, Mariana, thank you for your presentation, but I don't know how familiar you are with Rotary International. Are you familiar with Rotary?
Well, the Rotary Club is very famous in my home country in Chile. And I knew that they provided scholarships to travel for young people to go and study abroad. And that was very much appreciated, yes. But I am not familiar, Janine.
So just so to add to your knowledge, Rotary is 1.2 million people around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to an international convention, you see all the diversity of like-minded people. And right now there is a push from Rotary International to have the clubs really evaluate our future, because the future is embracing diversity. It is, I love your phrase, diversity is inviting everybody to dance. Inclusion is actually dancing with them.
Exactly.
And so I like that phrase. I think that's a bumper sticker we could build on. And I think that's what we are attempting to do within Rotary in the United States specifically, is to expand our reach beyond where it's normally been.
Mm-hmm.
And that is inviting younger people, younger professionals, folks of all walks. We don't have the focus that we used to have on vocations and, kind of becoming a mirror to some degree to the Chamber of Commerce, but to be more of a mirror of the community. So it's really prominent in the mind, especially of our district, and moving forward.
Yes, thank you so much, Janine. And yes, I am sure if you go to different groups, Rotary Club members throughout the country, like the Southwest, you will find diversity as well in terms of cultural background, etc. And As I said, in Chile, it's a very important club. And thank you for adding to my knowledge.
All right, are there any other questions out there? Great. All right, thank you again.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to me today. Have a wonderful day.